everyone, and welcome to our 2024 January Hope Session. We're so excited to have you here today. It's New Year, New Beginnings, Prescribing Creativity for Health. I am Heidi Parker. My pronouns are she, her, and I am your Community Initiatives Manager here at Arts and Healing Initiative. I am your Zoom host today. This program is presented as part of our free Hope series, Healing Online for People Everywhere, which we created to support the resilience of our global community through social emotional arts. Each workshop offers a supportive space for connection, healing, and empowerment as we navigate the changes in our world. If you have previously attended a Hope session, welcome back. If you are new, thank you for joining today. We're grateful that you are all here to create, learn, and grow together as a community. Today's program is in a meeting format, so please keep yourself muted until prompted otherwise. We are recording today's session in speaker view. We do pause during reflection, and it will be shared on our YouTube channel. You are welcome to leave your cameras on as you feel comfortable. We'd love for you to actively participate. Our session today is scheduled for an hour and a half, so feel free to add questions in the chat as they arise or use the raise hand function. Before we begin, we would like to start by acknowledging the Tongva Nation, on whose land the city of Los Angeles, where we are based, rests today. We hold respect and gratitude for the Tongva people who still consider themselves the caretakers of this land. By their example, we are reminded of our responsibility to our planet and to one another. So let's take a moment in our own way to honor the Indigenous communities of past and present on whose land you are joining from today. So I would like to welcome our presenter today. Dr. Mary Hardy is a board certified in internal medicine and is a specialist in botanical and integrative medicine, who has actively combined complementary and alternative therapies with traditional Western medicine for over 25 years in both her clinical practice and research projects. She is also a recognized leader in the field of integrative oncology and recently authored a popular book for Reader's Digest entitled Best Remedies. She serves on a number of editorial and scientific boards as well. She has also worked as an artist for many years in a variety of mediums and is specifically trained as a printmaker, a mixed media painter, and a photographer. Her art practice has always been a balm, especially when medical practice was hard. She firmly believes that if you can make a mark or pick a color, you can also find joy and peace in artist's expression. So welcome, Mary, and I will turn it over to you.
Thank you very much, Heidi. I am deeply grateful to be invited to be here with you all today. And I'm really grateful for those of you who've decided to join us. I have found that my practice of art has been both incredibly nurturing for me and a way to grow and to be more deeply engaged with myself, but I've also used it with my patients, and I'll share some of that with you today. And then at the end, I think, but the main bulk of what we're going to do today is an experiential set of exercises so that you leave not only with the idea of how arts are helpful for healing. Some of you, I think a number of you are art therapists. And if you put your hand up, I can see who you are. And so you know this way better than I do. But I think I have a unique perspective in having stood between patients and their selves, sometimes in the worst moments in their lives, and found lots of different ways to offer comfort and healing. And what I'm going to talk about with you today is one of those ways. So I'm going to share my screen so I can start my slides. And let's see, there's my share screen. Okay, now let me find my slides. Okay, let me go back up. That's a familiar painting for many of you, and we'll get to it at the end. You're getting a quick preview of what I'm doing. Okay, so Prescribing Creativity is the title that I've chosen because I think it gives you the best sense of what how I think arts fit into a holistic integrative practice. I'm going to take off the little pictures, so I won't be able to see you, but you'll be able to see the slides better. Okay. So what we'll be doing together: introductions, expectations, health benefits. I'm trying to not be an academic, but I do have that part of myself. Then we're going to do slow drawing, or it's also been called meditative drawing. Some people call it, but this isn't really intuitive drawing, although it could be part of that. Then we'll do the drawing practice, and then we'll tell you, and there'll be several episodes of that, and then we'll tell you how to enrich this practice and how to take it home. The main point here is just to enjoy yourself. Don't worry about, I'm not an artist, I can't do this. Blah, blah, blah. It doesn't matter. This is all about the experience of drawing and what happens when you put yourself deeply into that present moment. Okay. Okay, we've done our introductions. I've told you a little bit about me. Heidi did a nice job with that, and I thank her for that. And here's what I think we should all know: that there are many art forms that can enhance health, and all of these have been researched on. And I could do this whole lecture in a very academic way and tell you all the different studies. But many of you have participated with Ping Ho and Heidi in the Initiative for Art and Healing, and I think I don't have to tell you about that. You've experienced it yourself, or you practice yourself. And if you do practice, by all means, keep it up. It's good for you. And if you are kind of trying to find a place to do a healing art-based practice, see on this list what looks good to you. Some of these need more or less skill. You don't have to be a full artist to sing. You can sing for yourself in the shower, when you're by yourself cleaning your house. It's one of the things that makes house cleaning tolerable for me, is I can sing along. But we all have a place, we all have that impulse to be creative, to express ourselves in a way that's not linear, verbal necessarily, etc. Okay, so what are the health benefits of arts? First of all, it really helps with emotional well-being because it addresses a number of mental health aspects that are negative in our lives. So it helps with stress, it reduces anxiety, it can even relieve depression. And I've actually used this kind of thing before with someone who's, on the verge of a panic attack, and you need them to focus. So having them focus on a simple drawing practice, a little drawing technique, can sometimes short circuit the overthinking that goes on. I personally have found it to be helpful for pain relief, and so have other people with chronic pain syndromes. Art therapies like dance and other movement therapies can help with balance, coordination, aerobic conditioning, etc. And sometimes for the teenagers that I often or sometimes worked with, sometimes the only way to get them to do an aerobic exercise was to have them put on their music or have a hip hop dance class, because they really weren't into going to the gym. So you have to match people to their artistic expression. It also enhances memory and focus, and I think it may be helpful in slowing down or making us more resistant to things like dementia. It increases neuroresilience. We have more recruited neurons across our frontal lobe, and so we are able to have a more resilient response to whatever stimulus we get in, physical, mental, etc. It does reduce burnout for sure. During the pandemic, this was a huge use for this kind of work. It improves self-esteem, because although you think you can't do something, when you find out that you can, and you find the results good, that does make you feel better about yourself. And certainly just the attempt to try and to make an effort is always a good a good a good dollop for you, a good thing to tell yourself, I really made an effort here, I tried and I did well. It also improves social well-being, because the more that you are in this open space with these other distractive things, their voices lessened, then you're more available to be in social encounters and be successful and to be more deeply engaged with people. And all kinds of arts are a great benefit for self-care. So how did I prescribe art, and how would I prescribe it? I think the first thing to say is there's benefits in witnessing or looking at it, or rather than just doing. So going to a symphony, not only playing an instrument, although playing the instrument and certainly playing in an orchestra, people who I know who are musicians like that say that's just a deep sense of community, and it's like nothing else they could ever find to do. So sharing your art, doing it in community can be also a great way to do this. So but you can just look at beautiful paintings, you can look at photography, etc. So witnessing as well as doing can be very useful. Both can be useful for your health. So for example, I often would prescribe looking at a book of goddess images of the female form as a worshipped person, for women who are struggling with body dysmorphia and poor self-esteem, to get them to sort of start thinking about different ways that they could think about their own physical being. I also had a patient who had a very persistently negative, a negative affect, and I just couldn't get her to ever say anything happy or good. And everything that I said was yes, but. So I gave her a pack of tissue paper, multicolored, and said, go make some pictures and tell me how you feel on any given day. Take this stuff, glue it down, no big deal, any colors you want. And she came back and all of her pictures were brown, black, dark blue, etc. And I said, you've now made me a picture of the thing I've been trying to tell you. And she was stunned and thought about it, took that insight home. And that was the beginning of her beginning to try to have a different engagement with the world. It was a very powerful thing for her. And I, for example, always encourage patients to do what brings them joy, make their life meaningful. Not just about do good for others kind of meaningful, but deep and rich and engaged for themselves too. I've often had people draw me a picture, show me where they are in the moment, and they can be incredibly revealing. And I had a woman who didn't want to do the drawing exercise at home, so she was sitting in the waiting room and just do a quick little sketch because she just wanted to be able to get me off her back. And she came in and showed me her sketch, and it was a picture of a face with some lines across her forehead and just a very blank expression on her face. And I said, wow, this looks like, these lines look like you're going underwater, like you're just going down for the count, you're drowning, you're overwhelmed. And that was exactly right. So even quick little essays into this can show you a lot about who you are, what you are. And I think it's important also to know that that you can go get more training, go get more lessons. I have a resource list you'll get after the class, and it tells you about online resources. You can go to in-person art sessions. I often send patients to those, and the Healing Arts Initiative is a great resource that you should all know about and use all the time. And then for those of you who are art therapists, I would refer to professionals for more sustained engagement or a deeper exploration. Now, for me, I'm a visual artist, and I practiced all kinds of visual arts for a long time in my life, back to my childhood, really. And here's the more soulful or personal growth benefits that I've seen for myself. Working in art improves your mental flexibility. It allows you to see an issue, and we call them setting problems in art. So we'll say, paint this painting, but only use 3 colors or whatever. And just by having to grapple, you learn ways to use what you've got, be more creative, turn things around, look at them from a different perspective. Definitely enhances my creativity to do the kind of work I'm going to talk to you about. I have a really enriched self-expression from this. It puts me in touch with sometimes things that are in my unconscious psyche that I didn't realize were there. At a period in my practice, I treated women with severe eating disorders. And I thought I was doing a good job hearing these stories but not taking this pain deeply inside me, until I started to draw one day, and I ended up drawing a figure that was screaming. And I thought, oh, maybe I haven't really processed this as well as I thought I had. And so instead, I took that same figure and decided I wanted to have a positive version of that. So I continued to draw until I had a figure that was the antithesis of that low point in the drawing, in that drawing arc. And that picture was a picture of this information that I'd taken in, but in a healing set. And my patients who were the eating disorder patients were fascinated by that picture. And I think it's because I drew back for them my response to their deeply experienced trauma. And I think the one thing that we're going to focus on today that's also very good for mental health, it's a lot that you get in mindfulness, meditation, etc., is when you enter the flow state. And people talk about that. It's sort of unimpeded creativity, but you don't have to be writing the great American novel or painting the next famous painting. You can enter a timeless state when you become so deeply immersed in the present moment that you you lose your attachment to all the things that we attach ourselves to. What time is it? Who's on the phone? Oh, which reminds me, turn your phones off, etc. And you lose all those attachments, and you just get so deeply immersed in the present moment that you are not in a time space. You're in an egoless or selfless space, and I find that space deeply nurturing, deeply calming, and it's a practice that I do when I need to settle myself down. And this also kind of work is a good thing to do before sleep if people have a lot of anxiety. And I often in my prescriptive time would tell people to draw before they go to bed to try to get their minds off these attachments to all their worries. So I think we're good. Since it's visual arts, I'm going to talk to you about places where we know that this tendency, this is impulse, this impetus to make marks, to show we were there, to do them as a religious or a sacred event, not just graffiti, right? So mark making can be the oldest art, and I think for us, this means that everybody has the capacity to do this. Everybody has the impulse to put a mark on paper, put a mark on canvas. I mean, you can mark on your walls, but I don't think you'll be happy about that afterwards. This is a series of hands, both in the positive and negative, from cave art in Europe. And this is probably 35,000 years old. There's also from the oldest city in that we have good excavations for, which is the and this doesn't have all the marks. There should be some additional marks on this, but it's Catalhoyuk, which is a very ancient city in Turkey now, and it was a 9,000 years old, a Neolithic city, and they made all kinds of marks. This is looking at some of the plasters they put up. And so as you see these marks, you should be thinking, what kind of marks do attract me? What kind of marks do I like? So there's lines and triangles and dots and short lines and long lines and star shapes and all different kinds of things. And these lines are, again, from our deepest part of our history, so they should resonate with all of us. Now, what is meditative drawing? Or slow drawing? They're two different, they're called by different things, and you can find people who are doing this on the internet, and they'll be in the resource page that I send to you. The first thing to remember is it's in the name. It's to slow way down. So we don't want this kind of drawing, which is scribbly fast. We want this slow, intentional line. It's a deliberate process. You are very involved in taking your pen or your marking tool, whatever you've got, putting a mark down, making that mark intentionally, watching it go across the paper, feel the pen or the pencil move and make a noise across the paper. You should be breathing in your meditative breathing style, slowly, deeply, relax. Don't clench your hand, don't clench your chest, okay? And the more that you can be deeply immersed in the sensory experience of drawing, the more you'll be immersed in the present moment, the more likely you'll get into this flow state. And it seems I taught this class about 3 or 4 months ago, and all the people who joined us said, one of them in particular said, "Oh my God, I can't believe how quickly I got relaxed. And that's the thing to take home, that it's not about the picture you make, it's about what the effect the process has on you. So therefore, you should have no judgment on your output. You may find your output pleasurable. Pages that I've drawn on in a very meditative way, if I look back on them, just looking at the page again can provoke a meditative state in me. And I find that really amazing. But it's this connection of your self to the process and making it as unattached as you can be, the better your outcome will be. Okay, how have I personally used this process? Well, I told you I use it as an enhancement to mindful practice. I modify my mood or mental state, like if I'm anxious or if I'm feeling kind of punky, I can draw for several minutes, 3, 5, 10. If I'm really enjoying it, I might go as long as 20 minutes or half an hour doing just these kinds of drawings. It's a great warm up for when I want to do my own art practice, because it gets rid of a lot of your judgment in your head. So those of you who do have a visual art practice or a journaling practice, this might be good for you. It's a very good place to work on non-judgmental acceptance, because of course you always say, oh God, I hate that. But this is not about that. This is about just letting your mind, your spirit, and your hand flow through marks and colors. I also find that this can be helpful if I have a decision that I've been really chewing on and I can't make up my mind, and there's pros and cons in both sides. So I just set my intention that I want to be just having that in the back of my mind while I'm drawing. And I'm not rehearsing my pros and cons. I'm making a quiet space to allow my deepest response to that dilemma to come up. And in fact, I use this, and this is the picture I drew while I was making a pretty significant decision several months ago. So that's another way that you can use this process. Now, we're going to start our drawing practice. So that means that you guys all should have gotten you should have gotten papers from me that you could print out. We're not going to do that right now. The first thing we're going to practice is drawing your breath. And this is for two reasons. One, it's a nice practice just to do anyway. It's a good centering practice that settles you down. The other thing I like about this is it gets you in this space that we're going to talk about going forward from here. Now, you see that I have 4 different strategies for drawing your breath. They are, they are just starting your breath here, going in. This is the out breath. This is the next in breath, out breath, in breath, out breath, in breath. And you may notice that as I'm breathing in the meditative practice, my lines are getting longer. So my breaths are getting deeper and or longer as well. That's good. That's a way you can kind of you can monitor how you're doing. This is my favorite way to do it. But you could also draw back and forth, in breath, out breath, in breath, out breath. I also started a spiral and just changed my direction every time I changed my breath. And of course, I was kind of doing multiple breaths on the outside here. And then this one is just kind of goofy, where I would draw little lines, and every time I took this is an in breath, this is an out breath, in breath, out breath, in breath, out breath. And although you could do this, I found this was a bit more, provoked my anxiety more. So let's start. We're going to take a plain piece of paper and get yourself seated in a comfortable way. Hopefully you're at a table, or you have your piece of paper on like a clipboard or a board that you can actually write on. Seat yourself comfortably. And when you're ready, I'm going to invite you to close your eyes and do several deep cleansing breaths. In and out. Use this first part of your breathing to release your worries and your intentions. Don't think about the clock. Don't think about what you have to do next. Focus next on how you'd like to use the time we're going to have together to do this. As you continue your slow breathing, relax your face, relax your shoulders, relax your hands, shake them out. Now, softly open your eyes, look down at your paper, and I'd like you to start drawing your in-breath and your out-breath in any of the ways I've shown you. Okay, you can begin. Siri, set a timer for 3 minutes. Notice how your hand is coordinating with your breath, following it in soft and peaceful motions. A few last deep breaths, then open your eyes and come back to the room for us together. I'm going to stop the share for a moment, and I would invite you to put your reactions to this exercise in the chat. Tell me what you thought, or you can put your hand up and I can call on a couple of you. We're a pretty big group, so I can't get to everybody. So anybody have any thoughts, reactions, experiences? Anna had said so calming, and Ping said restful. Hi, Ping. Calming, peaceful, good. It provided you additional focus. That's great, Christina. And meditative for Aubrey, great. I appreciate you guys getting that sense. And I just want to point out that this is simple. We weren't even, you were only breathing for about 3 minutes. Certainly you could get some of this effect just by breathing, but I'll make a confession now. I'm a very bad sort of traditional meditator. I don't like sitting on a zabuton. I think it's like, ugh. And then my husband used to be very active and do Zen meditation, but he would describe that as making everything go, everything go away and everything get blank. Well, I am really invested in the richness of the world, and I would rather dive into meditating on a flower than sit in a gray room. So I find that this kind of work takes up a little bit of my conscious attention so I can let the rest of me go into a deep state of meditation. So good. So that first experience looked like it worked pretty well. Any last comments? Did anybody hyperventilate and get a little dizzy? That's the only risk. You have to be careful not to breathe too deeply for too long. That's a medical comment about that. That's the only risk of this practice. Okay, so if we're all ready, I can share my screen again and we can go on to the first drawing exercise. This is where you will need those little papers that I sent out. Did you guys print out your papers? Wave them in front of me if you did. If you didn't, I have a way around this. Oh, somebody does. Yes, yay. Excellent. If you didn't print out the little papers, all the first set of papers is a set of squares, and they're 1-inch squares. So if you didn't by any chance happen to print the papers, all you have to do is right now, before we start, get out a blank piece of paper and just draw a series of 1-inch boxes. Do I care if they're exactly 1 inch? No. Do I care if they're exactly perfect squares? No. This is, remember, a chance to let go of that toxic perfectionism. So we're going to start on that part right away. So lay out your squares, just about probably 7 or 8 of them, maybe. You're not going to fill up that whole page in one drawing exercise. That's just the way that I kind of have a page, and I draw through the whole thing until I'm, I'm either following an idea all the way through the squares, or my morning practice is to do 1 or 2 rows or whatever I decide I'm going to do. But there you have the page, so you can go back and use that anytime you want. Now, let me go back to the share screen. Let's put up our thing. Share screen. Okay. All right. Okay. All right. So here we are at the next piece. Let me just get this to go. Okay. Before we start, you're going to center yourself. You're going to breathe. You're going to keep it really simple. You're going to go very slowly and very deliberately. In the time I'm going to let you draw, you probably will maybe fill out 3 or 4 of these small squares. And if you're really going particularly intentionally and slowly, you may only fill out 1 or 2. I think you have to find your own rhythm, because when I'm kind of in a rush, I'll start going ding 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 ding. I'll go through all of them and I wait a minute, slow down. I also know everybody's going to tell me I can't draw a straight line. Well, do the best you can. My lines are not straight. They're kind of jiggity, and you'll see when I start to show you examples of what I did, they're not straight lines, and they're kind of sometimes a mess. But remember, this is the process, not the product. So the response you got to the drawing your breath exercise, that's what we're looking for again, but even to deepen it more, to give you more tools and more ways to do that kind of exercise. Okay. All righty. So just to make it so that I can be a little bit more explicit about this, I'm going to show you what I did. This is a picture out of my journal. And I would recommend that you start with just doing straight lines across one way. Very simple, just very intentional. And probably for your first attempt, I would probably do these 3: straight, straight, maybe diagonal. And when we do other things, then you could do all these other more fancy things. But I would just start with this. Now, I'm also going to tell you that this is, I've done a similar drawing repetitively, but I use different tools for this. So I use often a couple of different things. You can just use a regular ballpoint pen, and I have. And I think one of these is a regular ballpoint pen. Maybe not. But I also use these Sakura pens a lot. I hope you can see this. If not, I'll show them to you when we come off the chat again. I'll have to show you when we're not sharing. But anything that makes a fine line is going to be really good. It can be any color, but I usually recommend starting with blue, black, a darker color, just to understand how to see your lines. Okay. Okay. So now sorry, I don't know why this came in. Oopsie. Okay. So now we can start the drawing. Okay. All righty. Get yourself situated. Get your paper out in front of you, whichever paper you've decided to use, and whatever mark making tool you have, pen, pencil, fancy pen, whatever you want. It's better if it makes a relatively thin line. We're going to do a couple of breaths, and then we're going to go into the drawing practice. Okay. So let's take a few breaths together. Looking forward to doing this. So happy to be here. Love the feeling of relaxation and looseness that I'm going to let happen in my shoulders and my hands and my neck and my face. Okay, now pick up your drawing implement and begin your straight lines with intention. Know where you're putting your pen down. Draw all the way across to the end of your figure. Pick it up. Put the next line as close as you can to that line and begin to draw. Hey Siri, set a timer for 3 minutes. As you're doing this, remember, don't tighten your hand. Let your hand stay loose. Relax your arms and shoulders. Your intention and your focus is in your mind, not in the tension in your hand. Just follow your line. Use your breath to make it nice and smooth. Keep going. This is the time you give yourself to melt into your paper and to expand out into your whole inner world. Siri, set a timer for 1 minute. Okay, finish what you're drawing, the last couple of lines. Take a couple of cleansing deep breaths and come back to join us all together. Okay. I'm going to stop my share so we can see each other and I can see the chat. Okay, believe it or not, that was 5 minutes. Did that feel like 5 minutes to you, or less or more? You couldn't tell what time it was. Yeah, Normally when you do this, I can see Dawn really shaking her head, and she's right. When you get into doing this, it's that timeless space I told you about. And the nice thing about this is it doesn't take 2 hours of meditation to get there. You just have to have enough going on to keep your monkey mind occupied. And I have a pretty active monkey mind. So for me, this is a great technique. Um, any reflections from this exercise that we just did together? Liked it better than the breathing, drawing your breath, worse than drawing the breath? Like the square, didn't like the square. Your eyes blurred. Okay, AG says her eyes blurred and she got deeper and um and oh my, this share screen was too dark. I'm sorry about that. Heidi, can you see if there's something that we can do about that? Remember the hand was tense. I have to also keep telling myself that. That's exactly right, Lori. And so AG said as her eyes blurred, she got deeper and deeper, and the lines got closer and closer together. That's actually true. Sometimes when I'm doing this, I find I'm just going over the same line over and over again, which again, if I'm in the right space, that's okay. Better than the breath drawing. Good. Glad you liked it better. Somebody said Dawn said she loved this and she heard the clock ticking and the raindrops. That's nice. You can incorporate your external sensorium into this work. And so the next time you do this, when you have the ticking clock and the raindrops, you may want to be drawing circles or dots or something besides just lines, but that's a great idea. So Kat said she noticed she was trying to be perfect in the first square. Yeah, that's a very big thing. But then she was able to let go, loosen her grip and like loosen being perfect. Beautiful, perfect. And so one person, again, Dawn said she liked the diagonal lines, and you felt like quiet control, Christine said, with the squares. Good. Okay, so this sounds like this is an exercise we should take on to the next step, that you guys are doing this. By the third square, Dawn again says by the third square she was loose. That's another good comment, Dawn, because when you first start, it may take a while for you to let go of everything. And I find that if I've had a very busy day, I might have to draw for 10 minutes to actually get to the place where I'm just finally settled down and out of my scurrying around, keeping track of timeline. So thank you for that insight. That was a great insight. Okay, back to the screen share and on to our next drawing exercise. Okay, so I want to also tell you that sometimes with this, you have two sizes of squares there. You have the 1-inch squares, which are a great place to start because it's only an inch. What could happen? You don't have too much to cover. It just keeps you focused. But I also want to remind you that this kind of vibrant line drawing has been used way back even into this Neolithic house. This is a reconstruction of what a room looked like with pictures of vultures, and their wings were drawn with these very dramatic, intentional lines going down. And that's powerful. And you look over here, the lines keep repeating. And that this was probably a discussion of these people may have sacrificed or taken their community members after they died and let the birds dismember them. There are cultures today up in Tibet, especially, that do that. So, so I'm going to tell you now as we start the next set of drawings, we're going to change the shape, or if you really like the squares, stay with the square, but you can start to give yourself a bit more variation in what you're doing. So you can use a color now. And again, I used mostly fairly dark colors so I could see the lines easily. And this is the same thing I was drawing before, all these different kind of motions. And you can draw, if you like the diagonal lines, draw those. If you want to try this V, draw those. If you want to try the S, draw those. And so you can draw whichever way you want to in your shape. And the other thing is you have two sizes of squares. You have inch and a half squares, I think. And so if you found that the inch and a half, the inch squares were too small for you, go up to a little bit bigger. And then you can draw like this. You can try a different thing. You can try dots, see if that puts you in the same meditative state. You can put a circle inside your square and then draw like that. And then this is just the continuous line, like the breath, back and forth, back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. So there's many options, and you can start, you can stay very plain if that's what you want, and that's a good way to focus. Don't get overwhelmed by choice. If the choice is too much, then just go back to what you were doing. If you want to, have a little bit more freedom, or there's a color you particularly like, you can draw in that color. Okay, I'm going to remind you that as you're doing this, to inhabit your space, put all your lines into your space completely. This is a picture, an Australian Aboriginal painting of Lightning Man from Kakadu, and it's rock art. And you can see here, this person is absolutely filled up with these lines, and this energy is going right out their fingers and right out their toes. So as you draw in your shapes, fill them completely. That'll give you a nice sense of rounding off the experience, and will add to that sense of perfection. Okay, circles this time. Now, it's not a surprise to say that circles are a different shape in a different space. You could put straight lines into these, absolutely. You could try working with a curved line, see if you like that better. And you can keep with the same color pen or marker or whatever you used, or you can get a different one. So I think we're now gonna go ahead and start drawing in the circles. Let me see. Oh, yeah, this is some examples again from Neolithic art. On the right is Neolithic art. You can see there's spirals, and there's a radiant line. There's little dots and circles and squiggles. And this is from an Australian Aboriginal painting again. And again, you can see the use of circles, but circles created by dots, circles created by lines in a more animated field of additional circles and lines. But we're going to just kind of be relatively simple. The last thing to tell you about a circle is a circle can be like a mandala. Circles are generally considered very sacred shapes. They're a shape of completion, of containment, of wholeness. Okay. Now, this is obviously a very elaborate Tibetan Buddhist sand mandala. And I hope you've had the chance to see one of these made. They're just exquisite. And they might take days to make something this complicated. And then at the end of the ceremony, I've seen it done at conferences a couple of times, then the whole mandala is brushed away, and all this intricate, delicate work is swept up. And it's a sign of to the Buddhists to remember that don't get attached to external things, and it's all Maya and stuff like that. But you can also make a very simple mandala out of your circle, but don't get freaked out. Make a circle inside a circle inside a square. You can take one element from this and just make little shapes around it. You don't have to get super excited about this. Okay. Now, circle, waves, spirals, stars, or simple mandala, that's your options inside a circle, and you can do lines as well. You have a lot of choice now. I'm gonna give you a minute to get settled. Shake your hands out, loosen your shoulders, stretch your neck, roll your neck, roll your shoulders. Okay, now you got the fidgets out. Let's take a deep breath. A couple of these nice, soothing breaths. Hmm. Okay. Get your paper in front of you. Get your marking tool near you. If you don't have a paper printed out with circles, make your circles. I don't care if they're accurate or how big they are. Make your circles. Make 5 or 6 of them. And when you're ready, let your eyes go soft and start drawing in your circles. Hey Siri, set a timer for 5 minutes. Soft hands, soft eyes, deep breaths. Continue to focus your intent on the beginning and the end of your line, your mark. Go slowly, especially if your lines are wobbly. Go slowly and with purpose. Feel the line that you're making. This is a path. You can walk on that path. You can send your spirit down this path. You can release yourself to this path softly, gratefully, with joy. We're coming to the end of this session, so finish the last couple of lines you're drawing. And then let your eyes gently close. And I want you to sit for just the last few seconds and really appreciate the space you're in physically. See how your body feels. See how your mind feels. Remember this feeling so that you can find it again more easily. Okay, a few deep breaths. And I'm gonna stop the share because I want to hear what you guys have to say again. In the chat, if you have any comments, did you like the squares or the circles better? Did you like a straight line? Did you try a curved line? Did you change your color? How did you react with this? And if you want to tell me, you can put your hand up if you don't feel like typing. I may not be able to see everybody, so I don't want to miss anybody's hands. Okay. Oh, I don't see any hands. Okay. So let's see. One person said they didn't even finish their first square the first time. So Ping says she was glad to be able to get to the fourth square to explore what my hand would do organically without any directions. I found curly shapes emerge. I think I was truly going at a centered place. I would only have been able to complete one square, which is fine. You don't have to complete any. If the slides are hard to see in the upper right corner view, if you switch your screen view to standard, it should enlarge the slides. Okay, I will try that, Heidi. Okay, I'll try that.
That's actually for the attendees, Mary.
Oh, okay,
It
good.
changes their view so that the
Oh,
slides are across the bottom.
oh
Yep.
yeah, expand so it goes to the whole thing. Thank you. I'm thinking, okay, that's an interesting direction. I'm not sure, but
No,
I'll
that's
be
for
happy to.
them.
Okay, all right. Lydia joined. Welcome, Lydia. And let's see. AG said the circle was freeing. The square gave me a massive anxiety. That's really interesting to notice about yourself. So I would say if you want to go deeper for a deeper level of insight, you might sit with the square and find out what about the square, what causes anxiety, where that anxiety comes from. Where do you feel too bounded in your current life? That's just a thought. Or you could just draw circles and have fun. Um, and so Lori said she was trying to finish rather than be in the present. So slow down. That's really a good sign that when you find yourself rushing, you just have to stop and slow down. The circle for backlig, Nikita, I see. Nikita was more freeing, but definitely felt more creative. Color and shapes required more thinking. This is a good point, Allie. Sometimes if you start to give yourself a lot of choices, it takes you out of being in the moment. So what I usually do is as I'm beginning to draw, I make my choices then. I'm going to draw in this kind of shape. I'm going to draw with this kind of a marker. I'm going to draw in this color, whatever it is. And my choices are all made. Even if I'm drawing in two colors, they're all laid out. And I don't think about that again. I just execute my intention. Because if you're trying to think in the middle of this, well, I've done one red square. Do I want a blue square? I think I want to try this circle. Oh my God, I didn't like that line. Do I want a different line? Then you get crazy making. And it takes you out of this deeply attached space. And when that happens, stop, go back to the most simple choice you can think of and just draw the simplest thing you can think of. That's, I think, the best way. And Dawn says she liked the squares better, and she was glad I reminded them because she was going too fast. Yeah, I have to remind myself all the time to slow down, Dawn. So that's personal experience speaking. And Sandra thought they were both lovely. Well, good. Okay. So Judy said that she found the limits of straight lines in the square more relaxing. This is a good example of sometimes you do need to have just the simplest thing to do. And this is why we're trying lots of different things so that you can know that about this practice so that when you go use it at home, you'll pick the pieces that work best for you. And Jen said she liked the circles better. Well, I like circles too. Still relaxing. And I wish the exercises were still on the screen. Oh, okay. Well, I'm gonna put them back up again, so we'll look at them again. And she's Madonna said she was going to draw lines, but she ended up drawing circles. You will give yourself a lots of interesting input. Um, so circles sped her for Christina, circles sped her up, but emptied her mind better. So that's one of the things you're watching. What empties your mind? What gives you that nice intent? And really just to focus on the drawing as the path to that release of the monkey mind and release into the expanded mind. Okay, let me put the stuff back up so that Lisa can see. I'm going to share my screen. Here's my share. So let me show you what I did. I think that's probably what Lisa would like. So this is what I did. This is my slow drawing with the two, this is the 1-inch circle. And this is an example of, you can see there's a lot of difference what I do depending on the marking tool I'm using. This one down here at the bottom left, I used a brush pen. And that was probably too small a space for the brush pen, but it really drove how I made my marks. I had a lot more control when I used something smaller. And I started to do these more elaborate drawings. And sometimes these elaborate drawings do present me with too much choice. And I have to go back to something much simpler. Okay, let's see. This is the 2.5-inch circle now. This is the bigger circle that you have, the 2-inch circle. And in the bigger circle, I found I loved making these flower drawings. These I just found so satisfying. And they look like they're super hard, but I'm going to tell you the trick right now. You start in the middle, right here, and you put in your 5 or 4 little petals, and then you draw in between all the petals, and you just keep drawing around and around and around the petals, and you'll end up with something that looks like this. It's pretty amazing. And this will work even if you have a rounded mark or leaf type mark, etc. But you still can do lots of different things with a little more space. Okay, now slow drawing. This is a third chance to draw, and we're going to make this a little bit shorter. So you don't have to get too fancy. I want you to take a minute now. I want you to think about all the drawing that we've just done in the last half hour, 45 minutes together. And I want you to pick out whichever of the drawings you like the best, or which, and that includes you can go back and just draw your breath. You can stay in the square if that was the most relaxing for you. You can stay in the square and explore your discomfort if that's how you want to use this time. You can go into a circle. You can use a big circle or a small circle, a big square or a small square. You can use whatever pen you want. So I want you to take just a couple of seconds now and intuitively make that choice. Don't fuss over it, because you can do this over again a million times. Put your paper out. Get yourself ready. Let's have a few deep cleansing breaths to start. And you can make a ha sound on your out breath. Breathe in peace, release tension. Breathe in joy, release anger. Breathe in self-appreciation, release self-doubt. Loosen your body up. Okay. Open your eyes softly. Look at your paper. Pick up your drawing tool. Execute your intention. Start now. Hey Siri, set a timer for 4 minutes. Slow intentional marks. Relax your hand. Relax your arm. Relax your shoulders. Keep your breath free. Keep your breath loose. Intention on your lines, intentions on your marks. Release judgment. Enjoy the flow. Take a few slow, deep breaths. Finish those lines you're on. Just complete what you were doing. When you're done, take a moment to be in your relaxed state or to hold the insights that you gained from this drawing if you were challenging yourself. A few deep breaths, and let's all come back together. Okay, so was this more meditative with more choice or less meditative with more choice? More or less? More for Christina, more for Dawn, more for Allie. Great. Okay. Okay. And for some of you, who have um who have an artistic practice of your own, you may find that as you were drawing, this was sparking off other ideas in whatever your practice might be. And that's great. That's a good result of this. So not just the peaceful breathing, the entering the flow state, being relaxed, but you can start to spark creative ideas. When ideas come into your mind, just let them flow through. Don't get attached, just to notice them so you can pick them up at the end of the drawing session. If you have gotten some good ideas, when you're done drawing, you can just jot them down. Okay. Now I think, okay, so let's see. Did you guys tell me anything in the chat that's new? Did you change your colors? Did you? Soft eyes, that helped a lot. Thank you, Lori. That's good for me to know. Your feedback helps me be better able to help you get the most out of this experience. When you do the squares and the circles, I felt like the shapes supported each other, and that was comforting. That's from Aubrey. That's a lovely insight. And again, if you wanted to explore that, you could, in this time after you finished that kind of supportive feeling of drawing, take a moment and think about where else in your life you have found that supportive feeling or not found that supportive feeling. This is how you can extend this practice a little bit more. Ping said she found that drawing with her non-dominant hand was more relaxing because I had less tension than in the dominant hand. That's good. I haven't never thought of that. I'm so bad with my non-dominant hand that really it would be like I would probably have agonies over that. But good for you, Ping. That's a nice insight. Thank you. I'll remember to incorporate that. So Jan said she found this kind of practice more relaxing. AG went back to the square that gave her anxiety. Atta girl, I was going to ask you about that. And finished it and then transformed to something that beautiful with color. Lovely. So you took something, good for you for challenging yourself. I'm really proud of you. And it shows that you can take something that's like a sticking for you and then morph it into something that's more you. Atta girl, that's a lovely application of this. I'm so happy. Um, Dawn said that what was the slowest for her, and glad you remind us to hold the pen loosely, and that she found she had death grip. That's very typical. Coloring the squares and circles first and then using an ink. Christina, that's a very nice insight. And it's something I do. And one of the next things I was going to tell you was you can put down a color first and then draw into it. And that's a nice way to expand your practice without necessarily having to do a whole lot of fancy dancy stuff. For those working on iPads, she really enjoyed doing the breathing exercise with the watercolor function in her Adobe Fresco app. That sounds interesting. Maybe we'll have to have a whole iPad session on this, and I have to figure out how to do that. And Jen says when she gave herself permission to draw outside of the shape on the page, she relaxed more. Good. So for you, boundaries are more of an issue, something that gives you a little anxiety, maybe. And so that might be something to explore, crossing and not crossing the boundary and seeing what comes up. And then I think that's pretty much it for the chat for right now. Good. So we have just the closing up stuff to do together. We have just a little bit more time. And Ping said she landed on the circular pattern that reminded her of a cabbage, and enjoyed looking at the end result more. Also, like Jen, it was more meditative for me to be able to draw continuously without hitting any boundaries. That's lovely too. Everybody needs to know what is the most useful thing for you. And I would say the more anxious, the more wrought up you are, the more your sympathetic nervous system is firing, the more a contained event is probably going to settle you down. Once you're already relaxed, we've been doing pretty well at this. We've been drawing for, 45 minutes or an hour now. You may not need that stiff containment, and you may be ready to let yourself be a little bit freer. Excellent. All good. Okay. Let me go back to my screen and share it. And so let's see what comes up next. So for me, here's an example of what I did when I wanted to. I'm going to move my talking thing so you can see. Here's something that I did when I sort of allowed myself to sort of think a little bit outside the box. I started putting other shapes inside shapes. I just love this. This is so relaxing and intentional for me that I could do this all day long. But I also just took a square 1 inch wide and the length of my paper wide and just filled it with practicing different kind of marks and noticing what I liked and what I didn't. So I might come back, for example, and draw this because I kind of like that. And they were all fairly meditative. Having to make changes and choices did sometimes take me out of that state, but it was useful for me. I'm sorry, that's my next picture. I'll tell you about that in a second. Okay, so you can use color intentionally, and you can let your creativity out a little bit. These are still mostly black and white, but this one's not. This one's a lot more color, and this is back to Christina's idea that if you put down a color first, you can then draw into it, and that can be a different kind and even maybe a more vibrant experience. So the way I did this was I have some ink sprays, and I sprayed them all over the paper. and then, closed the book so they blotted on each other, and then opened it, let it dry. And then once it was completely dry, I could draw back into this. And I used the same kind of pens I've been telling you about. And I'll remind me on when we next go out of this view, I'll show you the pens I use. And some of these are absolutely like our meditative drawings. This one looks a lot like our meditative drawings. This one in part looks a lot like our meditative drawings. Even my tomato kind of looks meditative. These little dots are kind of meditative. But some of them are just like a little wacky, like this heart. I just kind of had some fun. And I would come back to this page and let the shape of the ink blot tell me what I wanted to do. And I let it guide me. This side was mostly plants. This side was mostly not plants. I like drawing plants. So you can actually end up with a book of these kind of things that you can keep, look at them for meditative guidance. You can take a small book with you when you have to go to appointments. It's lovely not to have something to do that takes you out of the dreariness of waiting. You can also take these, and if you draw them on paper, you can cut this out, and this could be part of a collage or a card or something like that. Very, very many ways you could use this. And a pattern that you develop here in your slow drawing or your meditative drawing, you can use in other art times. There's a lot of flowers you can draw and have lovely things to cut out and use other ways. Just also to remind you that you can get a lot more intricate with these lines. This is a picture of a figure from Romania, again from the Neolithic, about 8,000 years ago, and it's a human figure. And you can see they have, again, like with my lightning man, they have really occupied this figure completely, and all the lines go from curves to straight, etc. Cave art from Europe again. These dots are nice marks. These are hyenas, probably. And these spirals, which were a very sacred mark for the Celtic peoples. This is in a big rock in front of the entrance to Newgrange, which is a Neolithic barrow tomb in Ireland. And I've been there and seen this rock, and it's kind of interesting to see such ethereal lines on such a giant object. Now, we talked already today about how you can enrich your process. You can look for inspiration in your everyday life, and I do that. It's a way to be mindful. If I find a shape I really like, a leaf I thought was interesting, a color that caught my eye, anything that catches my attention, I keep a little list of that, and I can go back. And then when I'm ready to draw this way, I have a list of things I can do. You can take a simple pattern, you can make it more complex. You can add a color. You can focus on nature for your inspiration, and you can even draw in nature, which, being in nature itself, is restorative and nurturing and good for you. So taking your little sketchbook out into nature, even if it's just your backyard, can be a lovely place to do this, by the beach, so you can hear the rhythmic waves. You can set your space very intentionally. So you can set out your tools. You can clean the area so it's very refreshed for you. You can put out a flower. You can put out a candle. And you can have music sometimes help people. For me, I prefer silence, but people sometimes find music helpful. And in which case, maybe that gentle, non-music music like spa music can be helpful. If a particular kind of music is really great for you, then you can do that. So, and these are all ways to get you to do this practice regularly. And just like with any other meditative practice, you get better with practice. It gets richer with practice. You expand what you get out of it with practice. And so you can see, just even in this short exercise, we had some people who did it just for the relaxation effect, some people who explored an uncomfortable edge for them and transformed it, some people who felt their creativity taking off. And there was satisfaction and joy and accomplishment in this. And all of you, I'm sure, made beautiful pictures. And if you want to put some in the chat, I would love to see them. So, taking this practice home. This is very short, and then we'll have questions. Set up a time that you do this. I have rituals in the morning, kind of like not super rituals. Like I usually have a cup of tea and I have a certain kind of thing for breakfast, but I might draw for 5 minutes, and then I usually do a word puzzle from the New York Times, because that's how I kind of get my brain started in the morning. And then I'm ready to start my work. I've kind of had a little fun, I've had something to eat, I've settled my mind down, and then I'm ready to get back into my practice, some of which is deeply intellectual. I'm making slides, I'm doing teaching things, some of which is talking with people and helping support them through a difficult time. So for me, this regular practice is useful for me. And I often, like I said, if I've had a jittery kind of a bad day, I will draw again in the evening to sort of just get into this deep, quiet space. And it's so lovely for me. So lovely. Okay. Now, questions. And if you think I'm the only person obsessed with lines, dots, and swirls, I'm not. Here's a very famous painter. Now, clearly, when we see him paint, we often interpret his marks as a sign of agitation. But I will say that this was painted when he was at the hospital in Saint-Rémy. And this was probably the most peaceful that Vincent van Gogh was. So you're not alone when you're thinking about these kinds of things. So I'm going to stop the share. My deep, deep gratitude for the time you shared with me, the opening of your heart, and your willingness to participate with something that I find so loving for myself. And I hope that that was experienced by you as well. And I encourage you all to put this as part of your self-care. Remember that you're precious, precious beings, and that you are entitled to feel joy, peace, wonderment, and fulfillment all the time.